Baba, any update from secretarial election?
नहीं अभी तक कोई आया नहीं सर मैं I am asking them to check.
We will start. Nevertheless, I think in
Kamal,
2-3 minutes we should start. The moment
Okay.
Deep is
Mr. Ingorani is here, sir.
he's on.
Mr. Ingorani.
Welcome, Kamal.
I am sorry I'm late by a few minutes.
Yes, we were waiting for you. Good morning.
Morning, Kamal.
Good morning. My apologies. My
No,
apologies.
I was trying your number, so it's okay.
Yes, yes, I did see that. My apologies.
No problem. No problem.
No, no problem. Deep should be on any minute. There were some problems logging in, and then we'll start.
Hello, Sanjay.
Hi, Kamal, how are you?
Good, thank you. Mr. Zuchi, how are you doing?
Hi, Mr. Kamal, how are you? Nice seeing
Good,
you.
thank you. You look just the same as you did 20 years back.
20 years ago. Thank you.
I think Deep,
Satyawal,
I
how
think
are
Deep
you
is
doing?
in.
Deep, are you in?
I'm here, folks.
Oh, good, good, good.
Good.
Yes, I
Oh,
can see
good,
you.
good.
Welcome.
Sorry, I couldn't. I had 8 mails from Fast, but none of them with the link. So I think it was my admin.
Okay, we
Morning,
are.
morning, Arvindji. How are you? Good to see you.
Morning, Deep. How are you?
Very
Morning.
well, Rakeshji. How are you?
Good
Welcome,
morning.
Deep.
Babaji, I think
Good morning, everybody. Sir, I am waiting. Just take call from Secretary Civil Aviation Office. As per their directive, we will just take a call. Just give me a few minutes, sir.
After 1 minute, please start. We can't have
yeah,
every
we can't have yeah.
All right.
Hi, Sanjay, Kamal,
Hi, Deepak, how are you?
everyone.
Hi,
Mr.
Deep.
Zutsi, lovely to see everyone.
How are you?
Very well, sir. Very well. Enjoying the lull between the second and the third wave.
Well said, Deep.
How long is the lull going to be?
You know, the epidemiologists are being challenged. WHO has already reported they've seen a 12% increase in cases between last week and this week in India. So who knows? Who knows? We might be starting it with fast.
Yeah.
Off the record.
Good
I'm
morning,
sure-
everybody.
I'm
Good
sure you're
morning,
busy.
everybody.
Lot of things.
Sir, with your permission, shall we start? Because Secretary Civil Aviation, sir, is on the way. He is stranded somewhere and he will take about 10 minutes to join in, but he is coming in, sir.
I think we should start.
All right, sir. Ritika, we are going to be on live, right?
Yes, sir.
Admin confirm. We are going to be live and we are going to start.
Okay.
Good. Right. Good morning, friends. Welcome to the webinar on sustainable tourism in India amidst COVID. Jointly organized by FAST. FAST is really FAST, Foundation for Aviation and Sustainable Tourism, in association with RTSOI, Responsible Tourism Society of India, who are very responsible. Friends, these 90 minutes of deliberation shall be fruitful if we follow the new normal. The new normal, so everything is there. There is a new normal for the webinars too. And that new normal mandates, we are aviators. We are used to listening in flight statutory announcements and demonstrations. So this is just like that only. I will request all attendees to keep a tab on the bottom line of their screen, which has a chat box and which has a Q&A box and raise hand. We are using only the chat box and the Q&A box. Whenever you have got any question, please put it in the Q&A box. And in any case, there are some issues, you are not able to do that, please write big Q, capital Q as a suffix or prefix in your chat, and we will take notice of that. And all speakers, all moderators will be keeping a tab on their chat box. That is part of instruction for the attendees. And attendees will be on mute mode and camera mode off. That we have kept so that seamless of webinar will be effective. There is a question of wave bandwidth, etc. All those who have already submitted their questions, we have taken note of that have been passed on to the speakers. However, nowadays wisdom is very dynamic. Every day, our new thoughts, new things are coming. You are free to rewrite, rephrase those questions in the chat box. Please do it. We will welcome and we will appreciate that. Once again, please don't attempt to put on your mic and camera because that is not available to you. And then now coming to some new normal for the speakers, sir. All speakers have been given full powers to use their mic and camera on and off as per will. Will be important that if we don't touch the controls and keep it on all that time, that is the recommended one. But there is a rider for that. We must ensure the ambient noise is not there because mics are very sensitive nowadays. They not only pick up the unwanted noise, but they multiply it also. So that is one caution for the new normal for the speaker in the webinar. Now, it is my onerous duty and responsibility before I hand it over the floor to Dr. Raman Sidhu. I have an onerous responsibility for many reasons. Number one, he is one of the life trustee of FAST. There are 6 life trustees. One of them is very important and dear to us. And then he has been advisor of Commonwealth Secretariat. He has been chairman of Indo-Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and he has been deputy chairman of British Business Group. And then not only that, he is a chartered accountant by profession. And yesterday only, I was on a program of All India Radio, and there they have invited a chartered accountant, their doctor, and few professionals. And somebody commented, CAs are as good as doctors. They are doctor first because doctors take care of our health being, and the CAs take care of our wealth being. So he is a doctor to us. And then he is a very qualified chartered accountant. He is qualified from in London. And then he is an independent director of many organizations. I do not want to take a list. It will be infringing on the time of many others. And then he has been a co-founder, and he has been past president of Puffy. With very brief, pardon me, sir, taking a little extra, even if it's there. Over to Raman Sidhu, sir.
Thank you very much, Babaji. Can I be heard?
Yes.
You've been indeed very, very kind, perhaps a little too kind in your words of introduction. I am by now more of a chartered accountant than a chartered accountant. So I don't know whether this doctor thing works at the moment. But very quickly we have an illustrious list of panelists with us, and I'm thankful to all of them for having taken time out in not so easy circumstances currently to be with us for this 1.5-hour session. Let me start in the order in which most of the speakers will come in terms of introduction. Lieutenant General Krishan Mohan Seth, someone I admire a lot, Gunner, former governor of Tripura and Chhattisgarh. He is the president of the Foundation of Aviation and Sustainable Tourism and is one of our life trustees and has been leading FAST to greater glory over the years. And the multifarious activities that FAST have today, a lot of that is entirely due to General Seth. Our partners in crime in this webinar is RTSOI, and let me introduce Rakesh Mathur, who's currently the honorary president of RTSOI and one of the founding members. RTSOI is a hospitality industry group. Rakesh did his schooling in Shimla and graduation in Eco Honors from SRCC, Delhi University, and joined Oberoi as a management trainee. He spent a lot of his subsequent life in the ITC group. He was president of ITC Welcome Heritage. All the heritage properties of ITC were there, including the one in Jodhpur, which is run under the chairmanship of His Highness Maharaj Gaj Singh. He's a co-founder, member of the Advisory Council of Faith, and chairman and principal advisor to High AIM, executive board member of INTAC, ISJ, Oro University, Surat Tourism Board, etc., etc. The list is pretty long, but someone who's been a friend over the years, along with his late wife, Renu Mathur. He also runs as a trustee, the Renu Mathur Charitable Trust. Over to introducing Mr. Vinod Joshi from the Elite IAS Service, Rajasthan cadre. who has kindly agreed to be the moderator of today's session. He's a former secretary and so eminently suited to this role as Secretary Tourism, Government of India. 35 years experience in public policy and administration. He has served in various departments at the center as well as in the state. He's been Deputy Election Commissioner in the center. He has been Secretary Aviation in Government of Rajasthan. He's been Secretary Culture at Government of India, an alumni of Harvard Kennedy School and an MBA from FMS, Delhi University. He is currently in the profession of providing consultancy and advisory services in the two areas he loves, travel and tourism. Thank you, Mr. Zuchi. Mr. Pradeep Singh Kharola, IAS, Karnataka cadre, 1985 batch, who's yet to join us. He's currently Secretary Civil Aviation. I'm told that he will be joining us soon, running a few minutes behind. Prior to joining this ministry, Pradeep ji was CMD of Air India and Managing Director of Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation and also the Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation, which is actually the nodal organization for the airport in Bangalore as well, which is one of the projects I had worked on apart from Delhi Airport. He's been chairman of the Karnataka Urban Infrastructure Development and Finance Corporation and has worked very, very closely through the very difficult Bangalore Metro project, and that's where he's picked up many of the challenges and ways of dealing with them that he's confronted with now. Delighted to introduce Mr. Arvind Singh, another person who's from both the elite college in Delhi University, St. Stephen's. I'm biased in saying elite because I'm also from St. Stephen's. He's also from the elite service, IAS. He read economics up to the master's degree. He's been Secretary Tourism since 2021. He was Chairman of Airports Authority before that. He served in his cadre state of Maharashtra as Additional Chief Secretary and has held the very key foreign posting of Minister Economic and Commercial Embassy of Tokyo and Chairman and Managing Director of Maharashtra State Power Generation. Also Maharashtra State Electricity Board Transmission Company Limited, he's chaired that as well. Very, very multifaceted, a lot of experience there. Over to introducing Deep Kalra, an old friend of mine, an entrepreneur and founder of and of course now the group executive chairman of India's leading online travel company, Make My Trip, which is a household name, launched by him in 2005. Make My Trip offered the convenience of online transactions coupled with great value prices and has revolutionized, if I may say, the e-commerce travel business in the country. He is also the co-chair of the CII National Committee on Tourism and Hospitality and is a member of NASCOM Internet Council. So very, very involved in the chambers as well, in all the relevant ones to the business that he does. Mr. Kamal Hingorani, we are very happy that the two airlines are as well represented on this webinar because they are very, very key to providing support for uplifting tourism from the depths it has dropped to currently in this like never before pandemic, the COVID pandemic. He is a transformational professional with 14 years at SpiceJet in leadership roles from sales, marketing, distribution, operations, experience. Prior to this, he was for 20 years with the global legacy carrier, another 4 years with a multinational travel management company. He studied general management, executive general management at the Indian Institute of Management, IIM Bangalore, and did his post-graduation in business management. Science honor graduate, also from Delhi University. Seems to be a flood of Delhi University's people on this webinar today. Welcome to Mr. Sanjay Kumar, presently Chief Strategy and Revenue Officer, Indigo Airlines. Has been part of the Indian aviation industry for over 25 years and has extensive aviation experience in areas of business planning, network development, revenue management, sales, distribution. Prior to this, he was Chief Operating Officer of AirAsia for India. for about a year. At Indigo, he was also Chief Commercial Officer for over 11 years, has worked with SpiceJet and Air Sahara at various positions. And both him and Kamal Hingorani are today leading their two airlines to, well, to glory, I would say, as far as uh, their carriage of goods business is concerned, because that is something which is thriving like mad. And even though passenger revenues for airlines have gone down, cargo is booming at the moment. I would briefly also introduce my friend and colleague Vijay Agarwal, who's currently the Vice President Fast and one of our life trustees. He served Airports Authority of India as its chairman for more than 5 years. I'm not far from the truth when I say that out of the 67 airport terminals that got transformed, literally you couldn't believe it. You had to see each one by one, and I did see many of them. You couldn't believe what you were saying, because from the very rudimentary structures we were all used to seeing, which were called airports, the man who very quietly, without any band baja, as I would say, transformed 65 of those 67 is Vijay Agarwal. He holds a master's degree in engineering, power electronics, and electrical drives, and was a Bachelor of Engineering from IIT Roorkee. He's a distinguished alumni of IIT Roorkee, 2011, and an amazing person in terms of being a great doer. I think with that, I come to a close in the introductions, and I've had great pleasure. I'm delighted that I was given the opportunity to do so. I will now invite the Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Vinod Zoshi, former Tourism Secretary, to rightly lead on the discussion and to moderate it henceforth. Over to you, Vinodji.
Sir, Secretary Civil Assistant has also joined. We welcome him, sir.
Yes, Mr. Kharola, I had done your introduction.
Mr. Sidhu, there is the welcome address by General Seth and address by Mr. Mathur.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. I got carried away in introducing these illustrious people that I completely forgot my initial task of inviting General Seth as president, followed by Rakesh Mathur as honorary president of RTSOI to give the welcome addresses. Over to you, General Seth. And Rakesh, you will then hand over after that to Mr. Zuchi. General Seth.
Thank you. It is my proud privilege and pleasure to welcome such a distinguished panel. About each one of them have been introduced so much in detail by Dr. Raman that I won't repeat their names. Also, all the participants in webinar, you're all welcome to this webinar on sustainable tourism in India amidst COVID. Jointly being organized, as mentioned by Mr. Bhawa, by the Foundation for Aviation and Sustainable Tourism and Responsible Tourism Society of India. Today, the whole nation is busy controlling COVID pandemic and saving lives and feel revival of tourism and aviation sector too can contribute significantly towards saving lives by providing livelihood to migrants and those who have lost their jobs. Creating income and helping inclusive growth is another form of fighting the pandemic. Fortunately, the second wave seems to be coming under control, and we are quite uncertain of the third wave. Human nature being what it is, the tourism has to restart possibly with the changed character. International tourism, in my view, will be slow to pick up, but people will like to go out, relax after the tough days of confinement within the household. Domestic tourism should be able to provide the required outlet. Rightfully, the Ministry of Tourism has been emphasizing Dekho Apna Desh campaign. Fortunately, we in India have places of interest, lakes, heritage sites, adventure avenues, places of mythological and religious interests, and above all, natural beauty almost in and around all the districts within the country. Unfortunately, most of these are not listed or catalogued. Leave aside last mile connectivity and basic amenities, hygiene, health, care, and sanitation. I remember about 10 years back, the then Vice President of the country in one of the seminars had mentioned in FAST seminar, the General said, please have these district-wise catalogued. Till date, we have not succeeded doing much about it. Some work has been done. It would therefore require all the stakeholders, that is government down to district level, service providers and host community, particularly around each destination, to quickly create a tourist-friendly, sustainable environment to promote each of these destinations. To improve the sustainable infrastructure would require decentralized schemes, involvement of private sector and financial institutions. We all are aware that almost 80% of the service providers in the tourism industry are SMEs, and many of them have gone under. In fact, many are struggling to survive. They have serious liquidity problem and have been crying for credit relief, waiver or deferment of dues for electricity, excise duty, water, and allied charges. I would suggest a close scrutiny of their problems and efforts to derive sectoral and relief plans for tourism and aviation specific issues which would help in reviving the domestic tourism at the earliest. Another issue which I wish to flag is while promoting neighborhood or domestic tourism is the concept of caravan tourism by providing caravans on hire and developing caravan parks in and around likely destinations and natural attractive resources which are plenty in this country. If we can do that, we would have restarted, we would have given jobs, we would have created inclusive growth and income for a sector which is virtually looking for the oxygen from the government resources. In the end, I would only like to say that it is very fortunate to have both the Secretary Aviation, Mr. Khorola, and Mr. Arvind Singh, who address and answers to the various questions which are likely to be framed by Mr. Jutsi, our very eminent trustee on the FAST, would go a long way in mitigating the problems of this sector, which has suffered the maximum during the pandemic. With these words, I would like to hand over to Mr. Rakesh Mathur, who will say a few words before getting on to the distinguished panelists. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you, General Seth. Thank you very much. And a very good morning to all the honorable panelists and speakers. This is an opportunity for me to introduce RTSOI to all the honorable members of FAST. And I will, of course, be repeating myself to some of our panelists who have been very supportive in the past and have attended our meetings. But I would like to begin by stating that RTSOI was formed as the Ecotourism Society of India in 2008 with the support of the Ministry of Tourism and the then Honorable Minister for Tourism, Mrs. Ambika Soni. We have about 13 founding members, and they are all people who are leaders in the industry, including some very senior bureaucrats and members of parliament. But they were all people who were engaged in highly sensitive aspects of tourism. For example, Lakshadweep, which is now a contentious issue, one of our founding members was running a very nice resort there. We have 8 honorary members, and one of them is very pleasantly a member of both FAST and RTSOI, Mr. Bez Barua. I see that he's also present at the meeting. We have 2 ambassadors currently, and we intend to grow this particular segment, people who will be ambassadors of goodwill and carry our message through to the larger community in India. We have 4 conveners in one in the Northeast, all states in the Northeast, and 3 others for different states in India. We have patron members, and I'm very happy to say that Mr. Deep Kalra is also a patron member who has supported us in all our endeavors. So we have 7 private sector patron members and 9 states as patron members. We have conducted about 21 workshops in 19 states, which is purely sensitizing tourism service providers. We have conducted 7 webinars, and Mr. Arvind Singh has been supportive. He has been present in quite a few of them. We have worked very closely with the Ministry of Tourism in developing the sustainable tourism criteria of India, which is yet to be implemented, but it has been adopted. And we also worked on the code of conduct for what we call the safe and honorable tourism, which was also adopted by the Ministry of Tourism, along with the pledge for sustainable tourism. We have partners, and we are very proud to say that we have partnered with very, very prime institutions like UNEP, INTAC, WWF, ICUN, and now with FAST, which is another feather in our cap. We have several publications to our credit, including the Environment Guidebook, the editor of which is my very worthy colleague and who's also a founding member, Mr. Mandeep Soin, and he's also present today. I can see his name there. Some of the key initiatives that we have launched, we are doing a self-certification program for our members, which will be available to our non-members also. They certify that they are sustainable and responsible tourism service providers. The Sustainable Tourism Criteria of India was the second initiative, which I spoke about earlier. We have launched a very, very important campaign called the Responsible Travelers Campaign, again, spearheaded by Mandeep. And this campaign is, we produced a whole series of videos by celebrities and well-known people, by bloggers and so on. And the message they are carrying on these videos, which are being publicized on social media, is please be a responsible traveler in whatever way you can. We did the ecotourism policy for the state of Manipur. We are working closely with Ernst & Young to develop ecotourism policies for Himachal, Odisha, and Meghalaya, which is being led by our executive director, Dr. Anjana Dheer, who's also present here. We are working closely we will work closely with organizations like Nangia Anderson and GEZ to evolve ecotourism policies for different states. And last but not the least, we have set up a resource center where a lot of information, data, books, articles, whatever is required by researchers in the subject will be available. We have been engaged with the travel and hospitality industry ever since we were formed. However, we were yet to get an exposure to the transport segment. And I'm very, very grateful and happy that this association with FAST has given us an opportunity to engage with transport and civil aviation being the key to tourism connectivity. I think it's very opportune moment that we start working very closely with the aviation sector. For us, this is a learning experience. There's not very much more that I can add to this particular seminar. I'd rather listen to others, but just 3 things. We would like to understand in more what are the environmental concerns and how we can work together. Number 2, some time ago, I heard the concept of a green airline. Some airline in South America declared itself a green airline, and we want to understand more about that. And I think we have very worthy people sitting here from the aviation sector who can educate us. We also are aware that at the macro level, issues of carbon footprint left by fuel, etc., is a key issue. But we also feel that at the micro level, the amount of wastage of plastics, consumables, food, etc., is also a very, very heart-wrenching, whenever I travel and I see, people ordering and the amount of plastics being wasted. We have to evolve new ways of packaging. We have to evolve new ways of service. We have to look at how we can reduce that carbon footprint which we leave behind because of food waste and disposal of plastics and wrappers and things like that. So with these few words, I'd like to thank everybody and hand over the mic back to Raman. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rakesh. Thank you, Jan Seth, for your words of welcome. At this stage now, I would request the Master of Ceremonies, Vinodji, Mr. Zuchi, to take the program forward. Over to you, Vinodji.
Thank you, Mr. Sidhu. President FAST General Seth, Mr. VP Agarwal, Mr. Rakesh Mathur, esteemed speakers of this business session, ladies and gentlemen. I too extend a very hearty welcome to speakers who are also my old colleagues and friends. Well, our speakers today not only represent both travel and tourism sectors, but also adequately represent the government and the private sector. The format and flow of this session in brief shall be like this. I would begin with introducing the subject of the session and flag certain issues for discussion, and then have 2 rounds of questions with the panel. This will be followed by Q&A for about 10 minutes, and then a brief summary of this passing through the worst time ever. And the tragedy is that we are still not able to see the end of the tunnel. While the second wave is still not over, India is dreading the third wave. The agony of the calamity is that it is not only the demand side of travel and tourism which has got the unprecedented shock, but even the supply side, that is the industry and the service providers, they have been hit very hard. And therefore, today when we talk about sustaining tourism in the midst of COVID, in the backdrop of demand and supply deficit, it is both the demand as well as supply that need to be resurrected and reinforced. Friends, COVID pandemic has given a new dimension and an interim diversion to the conventional concept of sustainable tourism. Currently, we are facing the challenge of under-tourism rather than over-tourism. The tourism destinations are confronted with low demand in place of excessive tourist footfall. So the burning issues before us are how to restore and recreate the demand for travel and tourism, how to repair and resurrect the service providers of travel and tourism who are economically shattered by continual lockdowns, and how to make the traveling, the destination, and tourism infrastructure health safe to allay the fears of the travelers. Friends, presuming that COVID is going to stay with us for a considerable time, the immediate priority for all stakeholders is to therefore evolve a sustainable model in order to sustain tourism amidst COVID. The union and state governments may have to revisit and reformulate the policies, plans and schemes, factoring the challenges of the new normal. The industry will have to innovate new business models and strategies suiting the changing consumer behavior. The community will have to create a health-safe environment on their destinations, and the travelers will have to strictly follow the COVID appropriate behavior. So friends, I pause here after these initial remarks. I flagged some of these issues primarily to set the discussion rolling. Let us now listen to the speakers who are the best representatives of travel and tourism sector today. And their thoughts will certainly help the sector to rebuild and revive. So I now begin the first round of questions, and my first question is addressed to Mr. Pradeep Singh Parola, the Secretary, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Government of India. Friends, Mr. Parola has the experience of both tourism sector when he was Additional Chief Secretary Tourism in Karnataka, where I met him first, and now in aviation as Secretary Civil Aviation, Government of India. So Parola ji, I must say that your ministry has so very well managed continuation of domestic air services during the second COVID wave. So now my questions are, how would you ensure to sustain and subsequently increase the demand and supply of air traveling within the country? Secondly, what is the roadmap for reviving and strengthening the aviation industry, particularly the airline industry? And my third query is, what prerequisites and what enabling environment are you looking at to commence international traveling? Mr. Karola.
Sir, you need to unmute, sir.
Oh, I will repeat now. Okay. So thank you very much, sir. And President of the Foundation, General Seth, my colleague and Secretary Tourism, Mr. Arvind Singh, my senior colleague, Mr. Zutsi, and all the leaders. I think I see people from the airlines. I see people from the tourism industry. Yes, the questions Mr. Zutsi has asked is really concerning all of us. Now, what has been happening is that if you really see in the past 1.5 years, tourism has suffered, and so also aviation has suffered. So both go hand in hand. Aviation, yes, tourism is an important part, but aviation also does other things like transportation of essential transportation and all. So that's how aviation has been slightly, I would say, better off than tourism, though it largely depends on tourism to a great extent. Now, if we really look at the last, say, 16, 17 months, we were at almost zero operations so far as aviation is concerned during lockdown. And then onwards, we started scaling up the operations. Now, under such a situation, when we are scaling up operations, when demand is far less than supply, it throws up various challenges. The biggest challenge is that how to make these airlines fly viably in these difficult circumstances. So we were able to do a couple of things which really, I would not say helped the airline, but I would say mitigated their hardships. First was that we went in for a calibrated increase in capacity. Now aviation is totally free market, but it was the first time because of COVID, we had to impose restrictions on capacity. Not a very welcome thing, but then it ensured that the demand almost matches the supply. The supply was kept slightly more than demand so that it's able to spur the demand. But at the same time, this ensured an equitable treatment for all the airlines, be it the small airline or the big airline. And as a result of this, today we have a situation that in the world, over 40 airlines have just disappeared. And the good thing is that in India, our airlines are still breathing. All of them are in trouble, but yes, they are flying. That was the first one. Second one, what we did was linked to this, which has not been done before. We introduced the concept of fare bands. Now, quite unprecedented. These fare bands were that we had put an upper cap on the fares. Well, that was not so important, but the more important was that we put a lower a floor on the cap also on the fare, so that the fares do not drop below this level. This became necessary that we wanted that airlines should get enough money to survive. Had we not done this, the cutthroat competition, because it's more supply chasing less demand, would have resulted in all airlines suffering. So as a result of this, yes, airlines started picking up, and we almost reached about, in terms of domestic, about 75% of our normal capacity. And then the second wave hit us. The difference between second wave and first wave was that in the first wave, we had a lockdown. In the second wave, we did not have a lockdown. The states were imposing restrictions. And once again, the air travel came down drastically. And now it has started picking up again. So we can see a second revival happening. And today we are almost at about 35 to 40% of normal air travel. So the lessons learned are that it was the domestic aviation which saved the airlines over here. And the same parallel I would extend to the tourism also. It is the domestic tourism which would really help the tourism industry. We are a big market, be it aviation or be it tourism. Our domestic market is huge, and international we have restrictions and all. I'll come to it later. So the pent up demand is really is really very big, and we see that it's opening up, and we see that even in the tourism sector, people want to venture out. For last 1.5 years, they've not gone out. Little openings in between, we saw all the tourist destinations were flooded. Now things have started opening up, and we will have both domestic aviation as well as domestic tourism picking up. One more thing is going to happen is that there is going to be a perceptible shift in the mode of transportation from maybe say rail or road to aviation. People perceive aviation to be a more safe transport so far as the COVID related protocols are concerned. We have reached what we normally call as a new normal. A new normal is that if you really see, I'm sure all of the tourism and the aviation industry is so interlinked, that air travel has virtually become contactless. And this has inspired a lot of confidence amongst the travelers. People feel that traveling the air, one will not get infected. Plus the health protocols, and our people are also disciplined. Now, the second lesson, which is common for aviation and tourism, is that even tourism industry also has to adopt a new normal. Now, this is very important, but it was very easy for the airlines that we had to follow some protocols and all. For tourism industry, for hotel industry or local travel industry, it's a challenging one. It means if we say that we have to take all precautions, it becomes difficult, but then it will have to be done. So the third lesson, what I would say is that apart from this is that inspire confidence in the people. Now, just as we were able to inspire confidence of the traveling people, the tourism industry will have to inspire the confidence of the people who would be visiting these destinations or staying over there. Now, for this, the new normal is essential, and the service providers of tourism, which are large in number. Now, these can be the tourist guides, these can be the taxi drivers, these can be the service providers in the hotel industries, and these can be the various service providers around the destinations. Their skills also need to be, I would say, slightly upgraded, and they also would have to be made aware of this new normal. If a tourist sees whenever he goes that people are aware, people are following the protocol, he will get confidence that yes, travel is safe, and this is something, as Mr. Zutsi was saying, that it will be with us for some time, and we cannot just lock ourselves inside the houses. So we'll have to move out, and it is this awareness as well as environment building that tourism is safe, and this sign has to go. This message has to go to all the travelers, and this is what we should also project, that tourism is safe. As we are projecting air travel is safe, we'll have to project tourism is also safe. Other messages would be that yes, there would be a class-wise shift as far as destinations is concerned. Tourists will go to those places where there is not much of crowding. So we have to look towards the experiential tourism, maybe the ecotourism or adventure tourism, where the crowding is less. So those destinations will have to be promoted more. Visiting monuments and all, people would be slightly careful unless the protocols there are of a top class. Now, again, measures will also have to be taken at the destinations, apart from the service providers at the tourist destinations, that all these health protocols and the safety measures and the health related things are absolutely followed meticulously. So all this put together would ensure that the domestic tourism will once again see an upswing. And then the best way to spread the message would be by the word of mouth. We may do a lot of publicity campaigns and all, but the best way would be when the tourists go back and they share their experiences, that I went to X destination and it was so safe. It was so safe and healthy, and all were following protocols and all. So this spread of the message by word of mouth will really boost tourism. Well, let's face a reality that today we are sitting in this seminar. I'm sure 2 years back, General State, we had the pleasure of having this seminar, a physical seminar. Now today we are having this seminar in a virtual mode, and the efficacy remains the same. So this also has a message for both aviation and tourism that business travel will not be as much as it used to be earlier. This is a harsh reality. Now there have been several advantages, not also not advantages, several good things where we have been able to convert challenges into opportunities, and virtual meetings and webinars and getting works done without traveling and all. This has happened. So this has brought in overall efficiency in the economic system. But yes, it has a flip side to that also, that business travel would be limited. So this is how we'll have to plan our tourism sector. And as Mr. Zutsi was asking about international travel, yes, we are very keen. And as you must have heard that even the visa fees is being relaxed and all. But the challenge remains is that the other countries are not allowing our people to go over there. Now, gradually we can see some good signs have come from Europe where they have said that they will be honoring our vaccination certificates and all. So our people start moving that side. Now, tourism is something that just if, unless our people are allowed to go there, it becomes difficult that to make one-way tourism, because all these things are bilateral, and it's both ways. So today we see that the airlines are working. We have air connectivity to most of the countries, but it is the restrictions imposed by these countries which is really, I would say, restraining tourism. Gradually, these relaxations are being relaxed. Or the entire world is watching India very closely. The things within the country have improved substantially, and very shortly we will see that the restrictions imposed by the other countries on travel would get reduced. And as soon as it happens, I think we will be coming back to the international travel being normal. In domestic also, once we are at, say, near full capacity, we will be also moving to normal. We will be removing these abnormal things of the fare bands and the capacity restrictions. That also will go. So we are all working towards this. These are all calibrated moves. It will not happen all of a sudden. It will be gradual. But yes, the fate of tourism as well as aviation is intertwined, and it's a good thing that both these sectors work together. And in the past also we have worked together, and in future also we will be working towards each other. We learn from each other. We depend on each other. So with these few remarks, I would say that maybe later on I would like to take more questions. If some question has not been answered, I'm sure that the panelists are given some choice that you answer any 3 out of 5. So those 2 can be taken as left out in choice. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Mr. Karola. In fact, you so rightly mentioned about that domestic tourism and domestic aviation has literally sustained the tourism in India. And India being a large country, domestic tourism, has some meaning. And also that rebuilding confidence of the people, removing their fear of traveling will also come from word of mouth, because if you travel and come out with a good experience and you share with other people, it makes a lot of difference. So thank you, Mr. Karola. We'll come back on the second round later, and some questions also, which may be asked in relation to what you have addressed. So friends, from government, let me now go on to the private sector. And my next question is directed to Mr. Sanjay Kumar, the Chief Strategy and Revenue Officer of Indigo Airlines. Mr. Sanjay, you have just heard the Civil Aviation Secretary, and we are all so well aware that within tourism sector, airline industry has been the worst affected. So I want to know from you how, now that most of the country has lifted the lockdown or have reopened the tourism sector, how would airline industry, and particularly your airline, work on strategies to increase the demand of air travel primarily by reinforcing the perception of travelers that air traveling in India would be health safe, as Mr. Kola has also mentioned, and it be safe even in the midst of COVID. And also how to incentivize and make an awareness drive, which you, I'm sure, must be following in your airlines. So can you please give your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Mr. Joshi, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning, sharing the panel with Mr. Karola, Mr. Arvind Singh, and other esteemed guests. So thank you very much for your invitation. Let me kind of just take it forward from where Mr. Karola left. I think we have seen in the Indian aviation side very turbulent time for last 15 months. And I think last year when we reopened the economy, as Mr. Karola already mentioned, that in a phased manner, in a calibrated approach, both with this, some extra governance on the part of the government, as well as extra control exercised by the airline industry as a whole. I think we could see that revival of the industry sometime in the middle of Feb this year, going up to about 82% in our case. And post that, of course, the second wave hit us, and then we went down, and then until we kind of went to the bottom in the third week of May, which was the worst time, I think, for the airline industry as a whole, when at the national level, we had only 40,000 passengers flying. That was on 17th of May. And after that, I think we have seen, COVID cases coming down across the country. And this COVID recovery was led by the states of Maharashtra, Rajasthan, MP, UP, Bihar, partly Delhi. And the moment we saw the recovery happening, and the cases started to come down from a peak of 4 lakh plus cases in a day down to about less than 50,000, we are seeing the recovery of the market in a big way. What we're seeing is from the bottom of 40,000 passengers a day, now the number of passengers are flying about 140,000, 150,000 a day. And that is a very positive and welcome sign. What is important for us is that how to get the recovery back. Between Feb and now, middle of, say, for example, end of June, we have almost 30 crore people already vaccinated. And I'm assuming that out of these 30 crore people, most of those travelers or most of those people who are wanting to get out of the house from one city to another, wanting to take holidays from one city to another, I think most of the population, traveling public, has already been vaccinated. And that is one thing I think we have requested both at the MOCA level and other level, just to make sure that all those who've been vaccinated, they should not be asked for any RT-PCR by any state government. I think that will encourage travel in a bigger way, in a more regular way. That is one point. The second point is, as the capacity is right now, for example, controlled at 50%, and we are already seeing that last 3 weeks, the bookings and the numbers, Deep is also on the call, he will kind of substantiate those numbers. I think we have seen a growth of almost 300 or 350% daily bookings on every booking platform, whether it is an airline or whether it's the OTA, everywhere we are seeing those numbers. So it is very important. Capacity opening is also a reflection of the traffic. If we don't have the flights in the system, then there will be people a bit concerned about traveling. So that is one request we have made to the MOCA Secretary Civil Aviation, even in yesterday's meeting. And I think it is in the interest of the traveling public, the economy, and the company as a whole, that we should open up as quickly as possible. And the third point is, which is more to do with the tourism. I think at our level, we have been able to connect some of the destinations which were kind of never served before in India. Places like Allahabad, places like Agra, places like Bareilly, and these are the places which have now been connected with direct service either from Bombay or from Bangalore or from Delhi, just to make sure that if you have to travel to Uttarakhand and Nainital and Ranikhet and Almora area, you can land up into Bareilly from Bombay and take a 2-hour road journey to get into those markets. So we have been able to create this connectivity deep into the heartland of the country, whether you go into the northeast, whether you go into the south India, or also North India. So Indigo has been able to create that connectivity. Just to let you know, today we are operating flights into Bhopal, Aurangabad, even after the pandemic, and those flights have started kind of picking up. So it is very important for us to create the connectivity first, then traffic will automatically bound. And we as an ecosystem have to make sure that we are able to kind of provide us, lean, clean, safe flying for all the customers. We are able to provide a same experience, the hotel and the other requirement, local transportation in the cities. And I think it's a matter of time. Indians have a very poor memory, but they also have, very, very hard nature in terms of, getting out. And I think it is a matter of time. If the third wave is not there at all, I think with the vaccination at the full speed from the government side and some of the measures by the Ministry of, Civil Aviation as well as Ministry of Tourism. Ministry of Tourism announced recently 5 lakh visas will be free of cost, and they have kind of announced an incentive program for the small tour operators and the travel agents. These are the all welcome sign in the right direction. It is just that we need a little bit more support from the government in terms of opening up the capacity, opening up the regulations. I think that will see us getting to the pre-COVID levels.
So thank you, Mr. Sanjay. Can you just tell what are the areas of support that you are looking at this juncture from the union government, from the aviation ministry, from airport authority, DGCA? Very briefly.
So we just had a meeting yesterday chaired by Honorable Kharola sir, and we of course have expressed our desire that capacity should be opened up, to if not 200%, 80% level, so that we can plan to mount more and more flight and then cover more and more market. Like there are still some market which are kind of restricted. Say for example, if you want to add flights into Patna, all of a sudden we have reached the 50% level, but we can't really add flight into Patna. Delhi, we have already reached 50%. So Delhi airport is saying, no, we can't add any more flights. So it is the same thing, whether chicken comes first or egg comes first. We have to kind of just find a right balance between the two and make sure that we are able to kind of create this environment of support system for the operators, both on the airline side as well as the airport side, and we are able to kind of justify the operations. Of course, none of the airline are stupid enough. If they are not even recovering their variable costs, they will be flying these planes. Certainly not. I mean, already crumbling industry, and you don't want to add to your misery by operating flights which are not even fuel cost recovery. So obviously there will be a lot more discipline, self-discipline from the airline side. And I'm sure if the capacity is opened by the government, it will definitely lead to a faster recovery than what it is
today. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay, for outlining the salient issues confronted by the airline industry and also coming out with a very heartening note that, the traveling has really picked up. And there are certain issues which you need to you address to the government and get the support. I'm sure Mr. Kharola would certainly look into this matter. But I must say that and congratulate all the airlines of India for towards maintaining the health protocol air travel. In fact, not heard mishap or any untoward incident being reported that somebody has caught COVID or got infected during air travel. So I must say that with so many passengers traveling every day, right from the time the second wave came, and even May onwards, I would say May 20 onwards, you have really done a laudable job, and congratulations to the airline industry for keeping the tourism and the hopes alive. So thank you, Mr. Sanjay. I now go on to the Secretary Tourism, Government of India, as the next speaker. Mr. Arvind Singh, the present Secretary Tourism, Government of India, has also been the chairman of AAI and so has the right insight and experience of both travel and tourism in totality. So Arvindji, the tourism fraternity is well aware of the fact that Ministry is making all efforts to sustain tourism, particularly the domestic tourism through various campaigns that you launched. Ministry has also lately facilitated a stimulus package and industry is very happy about it. Even SEIS scheme, I believe, has been approved Many schemes have also been customized to the needs of industry. National task force has been constituted to look into the issues and challenges of tourism industry, and industry is also waiting hopefully for the new policy to be launched. So, Mr. Arvind, I would like you to enlighten the tourism fraternity with about all such initiatives that you have taken so far from the ministry side to revive tourism, to sustain, and what is the roadmap that you are looking at to accelerate domestic tourism? And also, what are your views about, asking the government to commence the international traveling? Also, my question is that if air bubble arrangement has been
Sir, excuse me, sir. Unfortunately, the last part, I could not hear your question. I think there is an audio issue.
Sorry. So I'll begin with the question. So my question to you, Mr. Arvind, the first is that would like you to enlighten the tourism fraternity with all the initiatives that have been taken in the recent past to address this COVID crisis and the problem faced by the tourism fraternity, and what are the future roadmap that you are looking at to sustain tourism in India, particularly the domestic tourism. At the same time, how do we begin the international traveling? And do you think, as tourism secretary, the air bubble arrangement, which was so successfully handled during the first wave, and maybe it is continuing in the second wave as well, those countries which have started accepting the tourists into their nations, can we have air bubble on commercial grounds as well, and make a request to civil aviation and the government to make at least some beginning with the international travel? And now that you have got a very good scheme from Finance Ministry of 50 or 5 lakh e-visa, free e-visa, which means that things are ripe enough to begin international traveling. So we'd like to have your views, because people are wanting to know when is international travel about to commence. Mr. Arvind.
Thank you to all the esteemed panelists, the office bearers of FAST, and my predecessor speaker, Mr. Kharola, and of course to the questioner, Mr. Joshi, because sir, you will not recall, but we met when you were in the Election Commission and I was an observer. And you were packing us off to different parts of the country for travel and work. So we also got to see different parts of the country while conducting elections in, say, West Bengal or UP when you were election observer. So going back to your question, I think the theme has broadly been set out by, the broad theme has been set out by the previous speaker, Mr. Kharola, that international travel is going to come back slowly, and even when it does. So naturally, the focus has to be on domestic tourism. And we saw a very healthy revival of domestic tourism from last winter. Once the first wave had settled down a little, there we saw signs of revival of domestic tourism in mainly far off places or places of scenic beauty where people thought there would not be crowds. So this attracted a lot of people who were cooped up in their homes. So we saw the hilly tracts of, say, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal, Uttarakhand, the wildlife sanctuaries, they were all full of tourists. And I traveled myself to Kashmir twice. And the general feedback, when I once traveled in February, they told me that all the hotels are booked till April. When I again went in April, they told me all the hotels are booked till June. And this was in the major tourist places in Jammu and Kashmir. So that was the kind of revival that had taken place in post the first wave. And also we saw people, this revival, let me add, was primarily with air travel. And most were using the mode of air travel because they thought it was safe, and the fares were reasonable because of the fare ban and the flights which were done by the low-cost airlines. So places like Kashmir or places like people were going to Northeast, these were all happening due to air travel. Rails were not, trains were not working on many routes. And another aspect that we saw was that, destinations which were 4 to 5 hours from the metro cities, they saw a lot of tourism activity, that people would drive by road to destinations 4 to 5 hours away and stay there for some time and enjoy a holiday. So we saw a revival till April. The second wave kind of put a stop to that. So now we are trying to see the early shoots of revival of domestic tourism again, which we saw in the last few weeks. People wanting to get out once with this saw a decrease in the number of cases happening. We have, of course, done our, webinars of Dekho Apna Desh. We are launching media campaigns, and we will see more, sustained efforts at launching campaigns to promote that aspect. And of course, the incentives and that the government has announced will also help. And the industry and the finance ministry are in constant dialogue on what further help can be given to, revive the industry. One area that we can take is, of course, we have to send a message that the sector is safe and healthy and it is ready to accept visitors. I have myself written to all the chief secretaries that please ensure that all the stakeholders within the tourism ecosystem, that is the tourist guides, those who work at the registered hotels, then the tour operators, they are all vaccinated. And there is a sustained effort by the state governments to ensure that the vaccination program reaches all the tourism stakeholders. I think that will, send a positive image, and that will definitely create an atmosphere that yes, all the tourism people who are associated with the industry have been vaccinated and are safe. The ministry has also launched a portal Sathi, where we are encouraging units to self-certify that they are following all proper COVID protocols. And if they self-certify, that sends out a message that if you go and use this facility, then you are safe and all COVID-related safety measures have been undertaken. Now, coming to your questions on international, definitely that is an area that everybody is waiting for opening up, but it depends on the behavior of the virus, both abroad and in the country, and also on the spread of vaccination, that how fast are those countries abroad vaccinating themselves and how fast is our vaccination program spreading. But when I meet with sections of the industry, they are confident that it will bounce back soon. And they are already getting inquiries for travel when the tourist season starts in India. And the air bubble agreement has really served us very well. And we are now getting reports of some countries opening up travel to Indians who have vaccination, completed the doses of vaccination, or Indians who have RT-PCR certificate. I think the point that you made that we can start thinking of a reciprocal arrangement with such countries which are opening up for India gradually. Not all countries are opening up, but some which have tourist potential and see some traffic from India, we should try and open up so that at least we get some traffic coming back into our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arvind. I'm sure that all tourism stakeholders will be encouraged by your positive perception and will be benefited by your advice. In fact, I really appreciate, your initiative of ensuring that vaccination, happens to the fullest. In fact, I would at this point in time request the industry also, the tourism industry, whether it is associations like IATO, FHRAI, hotels, if they can also proactively work for vaccination of their own staff at the earliest, as also, launch some awareness drive and also the vaccination drive in consultation with the state government and the district magistrates. I think that would make travel and tourism go faster and we'll be able to put on the fast track. So thank you very much, Mr. Arvind. I'm really feeling nostalgic to see the room of Secretary Tourism. Thank you for sitting in your own office. So Mr. Deep Kalra, you are leading an online travel company, probably the largest e-commerce travel organization. And I must compliment you for make my life as one of the most visible travel brands during COVID times. You also co-chair the CII National Committee on Tourism and Hospitality. So, Mr. Kalra, please let us all know how travel trade, hospitality, and OTAs plan to deal with the new normal by way of dispelling the fear of traveling for the minds of traveler, generating demand for domestic traveling in the backdrop of Dekho Apna Desh campaign and other campaigns launched by the ministry. How do you see converting the outbound travelers to domestic travelers as long as the international traveling does not start in full bloom? And what support the travel trade you think requires at this point in time from government, especially from the Ministry of Civil Aviation and Tourism Ministry to sustain and revive the travel trade and hospitality? Mr. Deep Kalra.
Thank you, Mr. Zutsi, and wonderful to be here with everyone. Mr. Zutsi, the way you have actually got the right question for the right person is amazing. Now we know why you're considered a legend, because I have to share, I was in Kashmir recently. Like Arvindji, I also did 2 trips in 2021 to Kashmir, and everyone there remembers you very fondly. So clearly, wonderful work done. Sir, I would firstly like to really compliment the airlines, the airports, even the hotels, obviously under the aegis of both the ministries, DGCA, for truly ensuring that the safety protocols are done so strictly to the point sometimes it becomes annoying, because if you're sitting in a plane and you try to remove your face shield, promptly an air hostess will come and say, sir, please keep it, you're in a middle seat, etc., etc. And it's excellent. It makes you feel very safe. Like I answered one of the panelists' question, I think Mr. Umesh Mehta asked, he's scared about going on an airline. And I really tell him, and I've done maybe 12 or 14 air trips during first wave, second wave, from the beginning of the pandemic. I think it's the safest place to be. It's the safest place to be for 2 reasons. One, protocols are being done very strictly, adhered very strictly. Secondly, between you and the next person, there is always 4 layers of protection, and if you like, you can make it 5. You can wear a double mask, which is the new protocol, a surgical, a cloth mask on top, seal yourself and wear a shield. The next person is wearing at least 2. And even the most kind of stubborn people will wear 1. So I think you're very safe on an airport, you're very safe in an airplane, you're very safe with staff in hotels. I really feel so. And I'm saying this to also answer your question on what we are doing. And I'll just come to that in a couple of minutes, sir. So I think I also want to point out that the impact on sector we always talk about is terrible, but we only look at the large companies because this sector is actually very fragmented. All of you know it better than me. And it's the bottom of the pyramid where the impact has been nothing short of carnage. And there have been fatalities, people have just gone out of business. You talk to a shikarawala today on Dal Lake, or you talk to a guide in some other part of the country, they're saying we have not seen business. Thoda sa aaya aur band ho gaya. So I think it is like they are really, and that's their livelihood. So yes, in India you can, shrink back and you can subsist with a very little, etc. But for how long? So a lot of people at the bottom of the pyramid have gone out of jobs. And I'm not sure if the aid that the government is now giving, the ministry is given, is reaching them. So the only way to get to them is actually to revive tourism. So this seminar is very well, chosen, good timing. I believe the only solution this time, because third wave is inevitable. Jokingly before the seminar, we said between the 2 waves we are living. Second wave has subsided. WHO has already reported that we are 12% up in numbers from last week. And this is how waves start. So third wave is inevitable. The only question is how much can we blunt it? We don't know. It depends on vaccination drive going pretty fast, I think, and depends on herd immunity, etc., and how the virus behaves. What we can do, sir, I really believe, is to start opening up in a, I would call it just smart manner. Smart why? I think we have to leverage what we know. What we have learnt about the virus and about the first 2 waves, we know a lot more now than we knew in the first wave. The second thing that we have today, we have the vaccine. We must leverage that. And the third thing is technology, and I'll deal with each one. Today we have the vaccine. We have now almost 4.5% people doubly vaccinated. We have about 20% people singly vaccinated. That's not bad. Like Sanjay rightfully said, there's a very big overlap between flyers and these people. All frontline staff have hopefully been doubly vaccinated. So even a country like Switzerland, not a banana republic, a real country like Switzerland, who after a lot of thought has said, we are opening up to all. They're opening up to the world. Even India is not left out. No one's left out. So long as you're doubly vaccinated, please come, plus RT-PCR test and no quarantine. If you're singly vaccinated, sorry, you will have to quarantine for 10 days. I think that's a very smart way to start opening up, and we probably have to look at a similar protocol. The good news is, I think someone very brilliantly thought of putting a QR code on our vaccine certificates. That is something which is brilliant. Why? Because it is foolproof and fudge proof. We all know some of the RT-PCR certificates have been fudged, etc., causing a big issue. Today you have a QR code which can't be fudged, and secondly can be read by a mere phone. Any phone is a scanner. So today that certificate can be read by CISF with the scan. That certificate can be read by check-in at the airlines, and that should be accepted. And if you come in with double vaccination, I don't think you need any other tests. Maybe 1 year of the vaccination and then a booster, etc. Whatever the protocols the Ministry of Health comes up with, I think we should follow. So I really believe it's the way to go. It's a very simple schema. We have done some work. We have just taken it forward through CII. We would love to get a chance to present it. I think Secretary Sir, Mr. Kharola is probably aware of it. Some of the airlines have taken it forward, but would love to actually work on a tech solution to open up, which I think is the way. Finally, sir, coming to your specific question, customer surveys we've done the 9th wave of surveys during pandemic on our base. We've had more than 50 million customers in the past, clearly changing preference in travel. Clear. First was driving holidays. Second was longer breaks. Third was workations. And fourth was homestays. These were very clear preferences that were coming out, and within hotels also people were saying if we can get independent cottage, whoever could afford. However, a lot of people want to travel, but there are misconceptions. Someone rightfully said, and then I think Arvindji also said, we have to promote this. Even Mrs. Utsi, you said we have to promote, and we are, sir. If you go to our app or you go to our sites, you will see everywhere it is about safe travel. What are the protocols of safe travel? Some of the statistics why airline travel is very safe. So we are very keen to partner with, I think, a slightly modified Dekho Mera Desh right now. That is very popular, and we are partners with MOT for that. But maybe we should talk about how to travel safely and all aspects of it. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the sustainable tourism point, which I think Mr. Mathur made, and Mandeep had a point on it. Longer term, and it's not either or. I think we really need to think about how our destinations will remain travel worthy. When you go to Kashmir today, it's actually quite pristine. I went to Pahalgam after many years, actually many decades. It was beautiful, but I fear sooner than later it might go the same way as Manali. And that would be so sad. Or as Nainital, or as Mussoorie, or as North Goa. We all know what has happened in these places. So we really need to have a concept of carrying capacity where we don't take more than a certain number of people into these places, of zoning, what kind of hotels and homestays can actually function. And thirdly, maybe even large parking and electric cars to move around. The irony was 2 years ago in Manali, I could not walk on the roads. I found lesser traffic in Gurgaon than I found in Manali, and I mean it in season. So it is actually, I think, something we should take up seriously and maintain our Kashmirs, Andamans, when we open up Lakshadweep, all these places, I think we can still do it. We have an opportunity, anti-plastic, of course, but also carrying capacity norms. So I think all of us should look at that. I'll stop here, sir, but very happy to partner with our principals, airlines, hotels, and the ministries, of course, in promoting this in any way possible, including, even putting money behind it and reaching out, because I think perception has to be changed. People have probably the wrong perception about safety in travel today. Things can be managed quite safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalra. Just one related query, Mr. Kalra, I want to have your views. Today, almost 16 months have passed, or maybe more, since COVID has affected the whole world. Now, with every time there's a reopening, every country sets its own travel protocols, health protocols for people from the other countries. Now, today, European Union doesn't recognize Covishield. India retaliates. Now, isn't it time that an international common code for travel protocol should have been established by this time? There's an element of distrust among countries. Now, how would, despite the fact that COVID will go away, vaccination will happen, but this distrust between the nations and the need for international common protocol, you think UNWTO or some international organization can play some role in it? What are your views? Because the trade, your trade, international trade is going to be affected.
No, it's a brilliant point, sir, and I'm not sure I'm totally qualified to answer, but I'll share with you what I know, and I would love to hear this also from Mr. Kharola and Mr. Singh. I think they'll know more. So fundamentally, WHO is there. WHO has certain protocols, and one of our vaccines, COVID Shield, has already been approved. Now, the EMA or the Europe pass which they were making is actually for people to move around freely within European Union. So now which two countries have gone ahead and accepted Covishield are actually Switzerland and Iceland right now, which are actually not part of EC technically. However, it doesn't really matter because immediately the next day, 7 other countries followed and said Covishield is fine because obviously they were lobbied and they were said, you know, it's the same as AstraZeneca and you can't because all of England got AstraZeneca. So I think that part is probably sorted. Covaxin, I think we have 1 or 2 hurdles to go through. We must have a common one, and I think WHO stands for that. We should use that. So I'm lesser worried, and also this retaliation we won't allow and all. I'm not sure. I don't know how these things work. I think the main thing is to do the right amount of pushing, lobbying, whatever we call it. That this is the same vaccine. It has a different brand name in India. If you're accepting the English, you have to attend this. I think the problem comes with this new Delta variant, which is quote unquote freaking people out because we don't understand it yet. But many variants have come in the past. I think you need a little bit of time to test, and then once they will be assured. But common protocol, sir, I think starts at home. Let's first get 30 states to have the same common protocol. Then we can expect 200 countries to have it, is the way I look at it.
Very right, Mr. Kalra. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. So now I come to our last speaker, Mr. Kamal Hingorani. Mr. Kamal, you are a veteran of aviation industry and had a long stint in travel management companies also. So Kamalji, India has achieved the distinction of being the 4th largest aviation market and aims to be the 3rd by 2024-25. Our airport infrastructure is world-class, better than most of the developed countries. Yet the last decade has been of turmoil for the airline industry, with a large number of airlines getting grounded for some reason or the other. This was before COVID struck. Now, COVID must have certainly added, more issues for viability of the airlines. So with increasing demand, either if normalcy prevails or, by COVID itself subsides, or when India gets fully vaccinated, how do you think that airline presently operating, including SpiceJet, will be able to fill this supply gap, if the demand picks up? In fact, I have read some travel agencies mentioning there's going to be a massive rush in 2021 and 22. So is airline industry with only 2 or 3 major airlines operating in India and also for international would be able to cope up with the demand?
Thank you, Mr. Zuchi, for this question, and thank you, FAST, for having me here. It's such a delight to have to answer a question about demand because I'm a born optimist. Now, I've forever maintained that, it's just a matter of time that suddenly we'll see demand. When it comes to supply from the airlines, we are all well aware that there are 700 aircraft currently operating in India, and we have that many more on order. We alone have 144, and many other airlines have a lot more. I think these orders will materialize as soon as we know how COVID is going down. And when it comes to domestic and international, I think both should grow drastically. My personal hope and estimate is that by end of this year, we should reach at least 50% of pre-COVID for sure, both domestic and international put together. Going by, we've had tremendous support from Karola sir in helping us through COVID to, go through COVID protocols, etc. And like Deep just mentioned that, we need a common platform for our 29 states to have something which will be a ready passport. So just to share with you, with World Economic Forum, SpiceJet had partnered the Common Pass, which WHO has also supported. Though it's a while away, but that Common Pass was envisaged not just as a travel pass of IATA, which also we are partnering. Travel pass of IATA would support fully vaccinated people to go through one country to another, and it would be app-based, and information would be pre-available with the airlines to board, and the borders at the other end to accept passengers. While that is something we pilots have been done at 72 routes. We hope that hopefully by October, India should be part of it. And I sincerely request support of both Mr. Arvind Singh and Kharola sir to push that in whichever way we can, because that's one way that we can actually, encourage international travel. So I don't think supply of aviation seats or airplanes is a problem. I think demand is what we need to push. And like Deep mentioned, that what's very important is if we can have a QR-based app, which any airline or even railways for that matter will accept internally in India. I think it's something which is doable. We used COVID to digitize a lot of things. Today, SpiceJet hardly has any paper boarding cards. We do e-boarding pass, we do e-baggage tags, we are contactless. And all this happened because of COVID. Like Ajay Singh says, you can never afford to waste a crisis, and definitely not a crisis that's once in 100 years, not even once in a lifetime. So I think, we all have driven a lot of technology, digitization. We must make the maximum use of it to enable more and more tourists and passengers to not only travel by air, by rail, but also at the various tourist sites, at entertainment areas. And that's something, and I think the demand will pick up faster than, what the naysayers would predict.
So thank you, Mr. Kamal. In fact, your confidence about tackling the demand, whatever level it reaches, is really very heartening and very encouraging to the tourism industry, because connectivity and tourism are so intricately, related to each other. So, friends, I now go to the second round. Although we have very limited time, we have overshot, but then since I had mentioned, it will be just a minute and 1 to 2 minutes per speaker. So, Mr. Kharola, I come back to you. Single line or 2-line answers. 2 initiatives or future plans that your ministry has in mind to ensure economic sustainability of airline industry in the midst of COVID.
Okay. So am I audible, please?
Yes, please.
Yeah. The long-term plans, I think, we in the ministry about aviation, if we talk about, we have a vision, we have a vision for the next 5 years and all. What we are targeting is that our airlines capacity should double by 2024, which would mean that we will have about 1,200 aircraft flying minimum. I think Mr. Kamal would tend to agree with me that it can be higher also. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, and that's the more important one, is connectivity. See, airlines are one, let's not forget about the airports. Now, on the airport sides, we are going to be fairly ambitious that connectivity has to come throughout the country, and I'm pretty sure that we will be able to connect about 200 airports or heliports or waterdromes in the country. I'll just give you a figure. Up to 2014-15, we had 71 airports in the country. Up to 14-15. If we take from 14 to 21, we have already added 65 airports or heliports in the country. And we are right now at 130, 135. And in the balance 3 years, we'll be touching 200. Now, this immediately throws up huge potential that there is massive expansion as far as connectivity is concerned. Number 3 is the mode of transport is, let's not be confined to only aircraft. We have enough of Airbuses and Boeings and all those things. We will have very diverse type of machines flying. Of course, smaller aircrafts are there. And now means we are working on Dorniers and even smaller air taxis, those are coming through. Seaplanes is going to be a newer mode of transport. Helicopters. Now, if you really see that the unexplored Northeast and the hilly states of Uttarakhand, Himachal, Jammu, Kashmir, the last mile is still on road. Now, this we will try to convert it once again to flying machines. Those are mostly it's going to be helicopters. So a massive thrust for a massive thrust for connectivity. And to do all these things, the framework, the environment, the regulatory framework is being transformed. Maybe we can have a full-fledged discussion on that as to how we are trying to facilitate the airlines and the airports to expand in a big way, be it private sector partnerships or encouraging more airlines or a new role for Air India in a new avatar. So all those things are there. So because it was a quick fire round, I'll conclude by saying that a massive expansion of capacities, both in terms of airlines and airports.
Thank you, Mr. Karola. My next question to Mr. Sanjay. Mr. Sanjay, we have, the ban on international travel is till 31st July by the government. Assuming that the international travel starts sooner than later, how is your airline prepared for commencing international travel?
Thank you, Mr. Joshi. So as I mentioned earlier, subject to both the country's government agreeing to open the borders, we are kind of absolutely ready with our plans to go international. Of course, in the 5 to 6 hour range, in parts of Middle East, Southeast Asia, China, and CIS countries. And we definitely have, plans. The moment it is opened up within, I think, a month's time, we can deploy the flights and inventory in those markets. Having said that, on the domestic side, our plans are very much getting executed in terms of opening more and more new destinations. And as Mr. Karola already said, that the number of airports has gone up from 71 to about 130. We have participated in the most successful scheme of Government of India, which is UDAN scheme. And I think even today we are operating about 40 flights under that scheme post-COVID. So it is quite encouraging to see the government taking some actions on their part and also moving the needle and creating the infrastructure. What is very important is that we just need kind of one game changer. Last 20 years, we have been all kind of requesting forums and the governments to look at the ATF prices and the taxes in the country. I think if that is one thing which is kind of taken into consideration and executed, I think that will be the game changer for the industry as a whole. Why 700 planes? We will get to about 2,000 planes in the next couple of years' time. If that is, because then airlines will be able to financially sustain themselves and help the entire ecosystem for aviation and tourism in a big way, which is a problem at this point of time. The moment the fuel prices goes up, we start to see the redishness on the balance sheet and the books of the accounts of the airline. But when you want to really get into that scale and size, which government is creating a massive infrastructure of the airports, about 200 airports, as Mr. Karola just said. I think this is a high time we should also look at some of the issues on the taxes on ATF. And once that is done, this country will become, people say third largest aviation market in the world. But with our economic growth, with the kind of disposable income which we are seeing going forward post this pandemic, this is a very short-term blip, which we may call it. But ultimately, the future is very bright. I would say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Deep Kalra, I come back to you. Travel and tourism industry particularly has been making, requests to the government for stimulus packages. Various associations have been trying hard. Now, lately, the stimulus package, which has come just about 2-3 days ago, and then relaxation or concurrence on SEIS, and some other moves which have happened in the of tourism industry. How do you react to this package, and what are you looking at more to come from the government?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I lost the last part, but I got the gist of it. I got the gist. So firstly, it's a very welcome step. Really thank the ministry, the government. I think it was much needed. Yes, a lot of lobbying was going on for this, but I think everyone has constraint. We all realize that even GDP has shrunk for the country, so it's not easy to go ahead, but it's very welcome. I think going forward, sir, while there are many requests from different segments of this fragmented industry, I think the biggest one is to give infrastructure or industry status to the tourism industry. I think that is something which some states have done. They've taken the first step. Maharashtra has done it, Goa has just done it, etc. I think we can. It would be wonderful to get that done on a national level, if possible, or state-wise, because then all facilities, whether it is loans, whether it's other requirements for the industry, you're placed on the same level as industry. You get the same rates of interest. I don't think it's fair to keep asking for stops. And if I can sneak one more in, I think to resuscitate tourism, especially domestic, is going to lead the way. The similar scheme like LTC, etc., if we could get an ATG benefit given to individuals for the next couple of years for domestic travel, I think it would really help because people do respond to this. We have seen it in the past, they do respond. Otherwise, you don't want a situation where international borders open, everyone rushes outside, whoever can. So I think we should take this as an opportunity. Kamal said it very well. There's a crisis, but there's an opportunity on the other side. Probably that would be my second request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalra. So, Mr. Kamal, as we have all agreed that travel and tourism will depend on domestic tourism for some more time till international travel picks up, which may again take some time. So tell me, the regional connectivity scheme, which was launched a few years ago under the new policy of civil aviation. Now, how do you see this RCS scheme to help in promoting domestic tourism further in the midst of crisis?
So this RCS scheme and the subsequent URAN, various schemes, have actually proven that the tier 2 and tier 3 connectivity essentially came from these schemes. And really, if I recollect my data correctly, pre-COVID, I remember 18% of the incremental air traffic was coming from tier 2 and tier 3, while only 6% was coming from metros. This is 2019 data, if I'm not mistaken. I will stand corrected if somebody, but what I'm trying to say is that the air travel, which also constitutes a lot of tourist traffic, was growing 3 times faster from tier 2 and tier 3 compared to metro. Now that happened only because URAN was not only introduced but promoted, and we as an airline, I think, have used it to the maximum. It's a single airline which has used the maximum routes on URAN, and we find this scheme to be absolutely a game changer, most certainly.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Arvind, what message would you like to give to the travelers in India to dispel their fears of traveling end to end and also visiting the domestic destinations which have started opening now after the second wave?
So, as I said, sir, the upswing in tourism that we saw from last winter, and we saw a lot of very good and healthy practices being taken by all the hotels, the operators, those who are manning the tourist sites, and including at places where there were lots of crowds. We saw that things were very well managed, and the experience of the second wave and the time that has elapsed has given us an opportunity more. And I'm sure we'll see a further strengthening up in these measures, as Deep and others have mentioned. There is more awareness about this among all the operators, and they know people at the sites know that, or the tour operators know that if they don't offer this kind of a product which is safe and conveys a message of safety, it'll be a non-starter for the customer. So the vaccination program, the media campaigns, and the other self-certification schemes that we have introduced, I'm sure will convey a message that destinations are now safe, and we'll continue that campaign further.
Thank you, Mr. Arvind. Friends, with this, we come to the end of the interaction with the speakers. Now, as was indicated by me in the beginning, we enter the question and answer session. Now, incidentally, some of the questions which I have received in the chat box, they are basically related to the issues which have been already addressed. For example, risk of traveling abroad. When Mr. Umesh Mehta's question has already been answered by one of the speakers. What is the future of civil aviation in India post-pandemic? If tourism doesn't start soon, there will be pandemic of mental and financial illness. Progress on post-COVID-19 scenario and its effect on civil aviation. when and how it becomes third largest aviation hub post-pandemic scenario. And of course, what will happen to the jobs and non-payment of salaries and unemployment. So since we have already overshot our timings, and these questions, I think by and large have been addressed. I would like to skip this and would request the speakers that if there are any such very concrete questions which have not been covered during the discussion, FAST will write to you in the form of a mail, and we'll be very happy if you could respond to those questions, so that we can save time. So friends, I must say that it was certainly a wonderful session, very productive, very fruitful for the entire travel and tourism fraternity of India, in the sense that there have been many takeaways of this interaction. In fact, it has given a greater sense of confidence and optimism to the industry players. Also, that tourism and travel industry and travelers have to live with the COVID, and COVID appropriate behavior by all stakeholders is the best interim solution to make the travel and tourism sustainable amidst COVID, till COVID lasts or till vaccination is not completed. I would say that even with 100% vaccination, I think the time has come that some kind of travel protocol and health protocol will have to be followed in the post-vaccination period as well. Also, the vaccination at a faster pace and 100% vaccination, as I said, is the goal which I think not just the government, it is not only the responsibility of the central and the state governments. I think the private sector, and particularly the travel and tourism industry, can certainly take a lead, and as I mentioned earlier, play a proactive role in creating an awareness drive to prevent or to address the vaccine hesitancy, and to also facilitate the vaccination program in cooperation with the state governments and the district administration. And of course, last but not the least, the government support, whether it is fiscal or monetary, whether it is through policy, plans and schemes, is utmost important for sustaining travel and tourism business. We have also discussed that we have to address both the supply side by helping the industry to stand on its feet till they start running, and on the demand side by creating a health safe ecosystem for travelers and to rebuild their confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, as is the prevailing tradition of FAST, today's proceedings and salient takeaways will be documented and disseminated to all the stakeholders of travel and tourism, both in the government and private sector. In the end, I wish to thank all our speakers for not only taking out time for this FAST event, but also to give useful insights which will certainly benefit one and all in the Indian tourism world. Thank you, gentlemen. With this, I hand over the stage to Mr. VP Agarwal for the vote of thanks. Thank you.
You are on mute.
Sorry. Thanks, Mr. Joshi. Dear friends, I thank everybody for their patience, and we have a little bit overshot. You have heard of our learned speakers about the issue challenges involved in reviving the tourism sector amidst COVID pandemic. Stay at home, 3 words that have grounded holiday plans world over as the novel coronavirus pandemic rages. The multi-billion-dollar tourism sector, a growth engine in many economies, stares at the gigantic losses. Thousands of its workers, from top executive to bottom staff, faces an existential crisis. I think this revival will depend on efficacy and speed of implementation of strategies to gain shareholder and travelers' trust, which is most important. Social distancing and health protocol will be the guiding factor for various modes of transportation and stay. We express our gratitude to Shri Pradeep Singh Kaurala, Secretary Civil Aviation, Government of India, and Shri Arvind Singh, Secretary Tourism, Government of India, who, in spite of their busy schedule, agreed to speak on this important tourism topic. We are also grateful to General K.M. Seth, former Governor of Tripura and Chhattisgarh and President FAST, and Shri Rakesh Mathur, Honorary President, Responsible Tourism Society of India, for their address to the participants. I also take this opportunity to thank Deep Kalra, founder and executive chairman of Make My Trip, Shri Kamal Hingorani, Chief Customer Service Officer, SpiceJet, and Shri Sanjay Kumar, Chief Strategy and Revenue Officer, Indigo Airlines. Thank to Shri Vinod Joshi, former Secretary Tourism, Government of India, for moderating and summing up the proceedings by emphasizing that reviving to the domestic travel is the main focus point for the recovery. I am grateful to all the stakeholders in tourism, including FAST, RTSOI, members for sharing their thoughts with us. Our thanks to FAST Board of Trustees, especially Shri Raman Sindhu and Shri MP Bez Barua and other eminent dignitaries from RTSI. We thank all participants for being part of this webinar and Shri GS Pava for hosting this webinar and providing all technical support. Thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.